Hi there, this is Sandy Pry, the author of this book, The PlayStation Vita Year 1. Back when I created the Kickstarter for the book, I had a suggestion from one of the backers to do a sort of making of video for the book, and I really liked the idea. It's also a chance to show you guys how the book looks right now. So I guess firstly, what was my inspiration for writing this book? Well, I've been producing videos for my YouTube channel for around 3 to 4 years now. I've always been a fan of video games since I was 3 years old and my dad bought a BBC Micro computer. As I've gotten older, I've just gravitated more and more to handheld games, and that especially started with the PSP, and then with the Vita. Last year I had actually started writing a book about the PSP. It wasn't just a straight "this is what happened" approach. I was trying to tell the story of the PSP from the perspective of each E3, and how you could see its outlook declining and Sony's support declining as each E3 passed. I probably wrote around 10% of the book, and then last summer I read Jeremy Parish's first Game Boy World book. I loved the idea of it, this focus on the Game Boy's history and games. It got me thinking that nobody would be doing that for the Vita. So I thought, screw it, I'm gonna do it. So I parked the PSP book and just started working on this book, the PS Vita Year 1. I thought about trying to do a more general book about the Vita's life and its games. But the more I researched the book, and the logistics of printing it and posting it all over the world, I realized I only had around 100 pages to play with. I thought that if I have to target 100 pages for the book, then I would focus on the launch and first year, because that was such an interesting and eventful period for the Vita. It was important to me also that it's a physical book, just because I'm a fan of physical over digital. Early on, I did worry whether the book would be too short, but actually it's a lot longer than I expected. I was aiming 2 to 4 pages for each retrospective, but most were 4 pages, and the Wipeout 2048 retrospective turned out to be 6 pages. There was just so much to say. What you're looking at is some pages from the test prints I had done, so that I can see how the book looks on paper and also check the weight of the book. This won't be the final cover, by the way. So I began writing the book last summer, and before the Kickstarter had even launched, I had done more than half of the book. This approach worked really well. It's meant that I'll be delivering the book earlier to backers than expected, and it's all gone really well in terms of the writing. After the Kickstarter went live, I had comments from people that the original version didn't look good. Now for me, I actually did like how it looked. And to be honest, I was a little confused and annoyed by some of the comments. But then I was contacted by Steve Thon, who was a Vita fan and professional designer, and he lent his design skills to the book. When I started seeing Steve's pages, it was a revelation in terms of how bad mine looked. Also, there were so many things to think about when designing the book that Steve told me. It made me so glad he contacted me, because the book looks so much better for having him work on it. So if you have a project that you need a professional designer, then talk to Steve. The link to his website is in the description. When you guys see the book, you'll discover some nice little touches from Steve, like little nods to the Vita's UI. I'll let you guys discover them just like I did. There were a few of these little touches that I didn't even notice at first. It was only at my second or third look of the pages that I realized what he had done. So, huge thank you to Steve for being involved in this project. While I'm saying thank yous, I also need to thank the 3 guys that edited the book. Michael Ruprecht, who's the editor of handheldplayers.com, Spencer Presley, who runs the SMT Network and Vita Live podcast, and Adam Cartwright, who has his own site for Vita reviews and articles. These guys have put up with me chasing them and hassling them for months, but their fact-checking and advice has really helped the book read much better. So thanks to them as well. The book itself is split into 3 sections. There's the history part, which covers the period from the reveal of the Vita up to the end of 2012. Then there's interviews with developers, and game retrospectives. When I started writing, I expected the history part would be the strongest aspect, and the others would be just extras. But I'd actually say that all 3 sections complement each other really well. I would have loved to have done retrospectives for all the games for Year 1, but that wasn't feasible. For the 12 games in the book, I really enjoyed researching them and the studios that made them. I couldn't tell you how many hundreds of articles and interviews I've read about these games, and the Vita, in order to make this book. What really surprised me though was the interviews and how well they went. I was talking to devs for games they had made years ago, and it was awesome that they took the time to talk to me and had so many interesting things to say about their games. I learned so much about the Vita pre-launch that I didn't even know about, and hearing the ups and downs of development was fascinating. Chris Millar's interview in particular was amazing. Chris and his team made Escape Plan, and they also worked on the Unity port for Vita. Their work helped more games come to Vita. I didn't realise the work involved and how tough it was until I spoke to Chris. That interview also gave me a new appreciation for Escape Plan, and understanding all his thoughts and the inspirations for the game. Speaking to Tarsier Studios, these guys had the difficult task of making a game in one of Sony's flagship series, Little Big Planet, for Vita, and they rose to the challenge. I also spoke to Ricky and Richard from Honeyslug. who made Frobisher Says, and it was cool just hearing the random stories of how this crazy game was conceived. So thank you to them and all the interviewees. I was amazed at how well the Kickstarter went. I didn't set the bar very high, but I did wonder if I'd even hit that. I'm not a big YouTuber, and since I just focus on the Vita, I never will be, but I was just overwhelmed to see so much support. I'm going to be ordering the books at the start of August, so there's still a little bit of time if anyone wants a copy that missed the Kickstarter. Send me an email on the address below, and let me know where you're from so that I can give you a quote. I'm planning to sell the book digitally in the future, but I won't be ordering another print run due to the costs involved. So email very soon if you're interested. I learned a huge amount from the Kickstarter. I did so many things wrong, by the way. I won't go into all of them, and there were a lot of things I realized after that I should have done. Little things like updating the Kickstarter pages and images throughout the project, and adding things like banners to say final week to support the project. These sort of things might have helped the project a bit more, but it's the first time I've launched a Kickstarter project, so it's a learning curve. I'm so lucky though that the Vita community was so supportive of the book, and spread the message themselves. I saw it talked about on Facebook and forums of different sites, and that was from the community talking about it. I should have thought about these things myself in advance of the Kickstarter, and tried to talk about it on these various sites, but at least I know better for next time. I should also have sent out the backer surveys much earlier. The book is pretty much ready to be printed right now, but I'm waiting on all the backers to complete their surveys, so I can get your names into the book. There are around 20 people missing, so if you're one of them, please complete your survey soon. The deadline is end of July. I thought I should send the surveys out as close as possible to printing, so I don't get into a situation where someone moves address. But I didn't think about people not replying quickly, and then delaying the print. But it's okay, end of July will be the deadline. Then I'll have one more test print done to check the weight again, before doing the next print run. This here is the evolution of the covers. There was another cover in between that Steve did, but I didn't have that version printed. This is the original one that I had done, Steve's first draft, and the current version here. Like I said, this isn't the final cover. Steve has done another version which I think works really well. I'm looking forward to you guys seeing the final version of the book with the final cover. In terms of what's next, so year 2 is the obvious answer. A couple of months ago I did wonder whether it makes sense to do a year 2, partly because it was less eventful than year 1, and partly because of the time it takes to get the book done. I worried that making this a series of books would mean I wouldn't get to year 7 until 2025 or something. I wondered if I should do year 2 and 3 combined, and then not restrict myself to 100 pages and just go bigger. I did consider whether I should follow up with one long book about the Vita's entire life, or just maybe focus on say 100 big games, but it would mean really short retrospectives and potentially no space for interviews. I really like the idea of focusing on 1 year at a time. One thing I'm considering though is to work with other writers and split the work for the retrospectives, so that the book can be completed faster. It's a slow process writing all of it on my own, and there were times when sections took a long time because the words just weren't flowing. I remember for the Sound Shapes retrospective, I'd been working on it for 2 weeks and I'd only written 300 words. It just wasn't working. I went back and replayed most of the game. I remember it was a Friday night and then I just got inspired and stayed up till 1 or 2 AM and wrote the whole thing. For the next book, I'm not going to start anything until I hear your feedback. I hope this doesn't sound arrogant, but I think it's pretty good. I'm proud of it, but I want to know what you guys think. And assuming you're happy with it, then I'll start planning year 2. I do like the idea of the year 2 book, just from the perspective of the game retrospectives like Killzone, Soul Sacrifice, Muramasa, Tearaway and more. There's one last thank you, and that's to all the Kickstarter backers that helped me make this project a reality. Thank you so much, and I really hope you enjoy the book. I'm happy to answer any questions, and if you're watching this and you haven't ordered one and you do want one, you've got until the end of July to email me. Thanks for watching, guys.